можете рассчитывать на то, что товарищ Сталин сумеет выполнить свой долг.
Imagine being the son of the most feared man on earth and still feeling utterly invisible. Yakov Dzhugashvili's life was a tragedy of neglect and cruelty. As Stalin's eldest son, he was starved of love and relentlessly rejected by his father. You know what's crazy? Even as the world feared Stalin, his son suffered in silence. His capture and death reveal ultimate betrayal. And here's where it gets even stranger. Yakov was born in 1907 in Georgia to Stalin and Kato Svanidze, but happiness never had a chance. His mother died of typhus when he was just a toddler, and instead of grieving, Stalin reacted with cold detachment. Consumed by revolutionary work, he abandoned Yakov entirely. The boy was left in the care of maternal relatives in Tbilisi, growing up in quiet poverty while his father climbed the ranks of Soviet power. Imagine knowing your dad was one of the most powerful men alive, yet feeling invisible, no affection, no guidance, just the shadow of a father he could never reach. But wait, it's about to get way more shocking. As a teenager in the early 1920s, Yakov arrived in Moscow, stepping into the cold, tense corridors of the Kremlin. The air was thick with fear and ambition. Every corner seemed to hum with danger, yet his father Stalin showed nothing but contempt. Publicly, Yakov was mocked and called weak and useless, a constant reminder of the man he could never please. You can imagine the clash, a sensitive, lonely boy thrown into a ruthless, unforgiving world. And it didn't stop at verbal jabs. Integrating into Stalin's new family was impossible. Nadezhda Alliluyeva and the half-siblings didn't embrace him. He remained the outsider, the unwelcome shadow in the very heart of Soviet power. What would you have done facing rejection from the most powerful man alive, your father? And here's where it gets even darker. Yakov found a flicker of warmth with Zoya Gunina, a Jewish woman who became his only source of emotional support. He dreamed of marrying her, carving a life outside Stalin's cold shadow, but his hopes were brutally crushed. Stalin refused, citing anti-Semitic prejudice and political image concerns, leaving Yakov trapped in despair. The rejection drove him to the edge. He attempted suicide with a pistol. And here's the horrifying part. Stalin didn't mourn, didn't comfort. He mocked his son's failure even to kill himself properly, turning pain into cruelty. That moment didn't just break Yakov. It sealed the fractured, almost irreparable nature of their relationship. Can you even imagine a father reacting this way, mocking your very survival attempt? This is where the line between parental neglect and sheer brutality vanishes. Man, just when Yakov thought things couldn't get more tangled, he dives headfirst into the Red Army in the early 30s. Guess that's one way to wrangle some order out of a mess. He grinds through artillery school and comes out swinging as a lieutenant. Thing is, the guy's stubborn. He refused to ride his old man's coattails, even though, let's be real, having Stalin as your dad is a wild card you don't just toss aside. Yakov wanted to actually earn his stripes, not just wear them. Still, that last name, it followed him around like a bad smell. Some folks were tripping over themselves to give him special treatment, while others just stared, thinking, yeah, of course he got here. No matter what he did, win or screw up, people were watching, judging. The poor dude couldn't take a step without feeling the weight of his father's shadow. Escaping it? Yeah, good luck with that.
L'armée allemande n'est plus qu'à quelques kilomètres de Moscou. La capitale est bombardée tous les jours. La population se réfugie dans le métro. L'écrivain Viktor Kravchenko note dans son journal.
And here's where the world itself seemed to collapse around him. June 1941 brought the devastating, surprise German invasion, Operation Barbarossa. Stalin ignored repeated intelligence warnings, leaving the Red Army exposed and disorganized. Entire divisions crumbled under the blitzkrieg, unable to withstand the rapid German advance. Chaos reigned on the front lines as soldiers scrambled to respond to an overwhelming force. For Yakov, now an artillery officer, the disarray wasn't abstract. It was personal. His unit faced encirclement, relentless attacks, and mounting casualties, a stark prelude to the capture that would change the course of his life forever. And here's where his life took a brutal turn. Yakov, serving as an artillery officer on the collapsing Western Front, faced chaos. His unit was surrounded, cut off, and decimated by relentless German forces. On July 16, 1941, likely wounded and out of ammunition, Yakov had no escape route. The Germans immediately realized the significance of their prisoner, Stalin's eldest son. From that moment, his life became a political pawn, stripped of choice, as his identity alone made him a symbol the Nazis intended to exploit against the Soviet Union. And here's where it gets utterly shocking. Stalin had issued order number 270. Surrender was treason, and the families of prisoners of war faced punishment. When news of Yakov's capture reached him, there was no concern, no relief, only judgment. He immediately branded his son a coward, a traitor who had failed to die honorably in battle. The man who ruled an empire treated his child's survival as disgraceful. This act wasn't just political, it was deeply personal cruelty, a father turning his back on the son who had no choice but to endure the horrors of capture.
Ici, alors que tous ses fidèles le pressent d'évacuer la capitale, qu'il prend une décision qui va tout changer.
And here's where the psychological torment began. In initial interrogations, Yakov refused to denounce the USSR or collaborate, standing firm despite the Nazis' pressure. He was transferred to the Zellenbau wing of Sachsenhausen, a special section for high-value prisoners. The Germans used staged propaganda photos of him in leaflets aimed at demoralizing Soviet troops. The chilling message loud and clear. Even Stalin's son has surrendered. Trapped in enemy hands, his image became a weapon against his own country, and every photograph and leaflet reinforced his symbolic role in a war he never sought, amplifying both shame and despair. And here's the moment that sealed his tragic fate. After the Soviet victory at Stalingrad, the Germans captured Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus and offered to exchange him for Yakov. It was a chance, a glimmer of hope. But Stalin's reply was cold, calculating, and horrifying. "I will not trade a marshal for a lieutenant." With that single sentence, he consciously abandoned his son, leaving him to face the Nazis alone. No negotiation, no mercy. Yakov's life, already filled with neglect and suffering, was now defined by one of history's most chilling acts of parental and political betrayal. And here's where the psychological torment became unbearable. Yakov was confined in a bare concrete cell, exposed to constant light, under continuous surveillance, and forced into absolute isolation. From any news or family, each day drained him further. His body thinned, his eyes dulled, and his movements became mechanical, as if he were fading before anyone could see. The crushing weight of hopelessness pressed on him, intensified by the certainty that no rescue was coming. Every tick of the clock reminded him that he was entirely alone, betrayed not only by the enemy, but also by the father whose name he carried. And here's where it gets truly haunting. In Sachsenhausen, reports surfaced of a subtle but alarming change in Yakov. Once withdrawn and broken, he began showing defiance, even engaging in a heated argument with a guard. Then came April 14, 1943, a date shrouded in mystery. Official Nazi records claimed he died by suicide, running into an electric fence. Yet historians and survivors have long debated the truth. Strong evidence suggests execution. Perhaps he was shot after a confrontation or deliberately provoked into the fence. No reliable witnesses survived, and both the Nazi and Soviet regimes cloaked the events in secrecy. For Yakov, there was no heroic escape, no final rescue, only ambiguity, fear, and a death that reflected the cruelty he had endured all his life, magnified by the very powers that shaped his destiny. And the cruelty didn't end with Yakov. Stalin turned his wrath on Yakov's wife, Yulia Meltzer, arresting her through the NKVD on baseless collaboration charges. She endured imprisonment, separated from her young daughter, Galina. The child grew up in obscurity, her father's name systematically erased from history. Stalin never publicly acknowledged Yakov, never offered a memorial, a mention, or any recognition of his suffering. The legacy of cruelty extended beyond Yakov's life, touching the innocent and ensuring that the son of the most powerful man in the world would vanish from memory, a ghost cast aside by both family and state. And here's where the story finally comes into focus. The full truth about Yakov's fate only began emerging after Stalin's death and the eventual fall of the Soviet Union. Archival evidence confirmed his steadfastness in captivity, showing a man who refused to betray his country despite unbearable pressure. Yet many details remain shrouded in mystery, hidden by decades of secrecy from both Nazi and Soviet records. Historians continue to debate the exact circumstances of his death, but one fact is clear: Yakov was a loyal soldier trapped in a cruel world, ultimately betrayed not just by the enemy, but by the very ideology and father that shaped his life. His story is a chilling reminder of the personal cost of power. Yakov Dzhugashvili died alone, a victim of both Nazi captors and his own father's ruthlessness. His story isn't just history, it's a stark testament to Stalin's cruelty, where even family was disposable. So what do you think of Yakov's tragic life? Drop a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.